Welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makbool with you at BTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at the flood situation across the country. Of course, these unprecedented floods in Pakistan have affected more than 33 million people. We know that there has been a lot of damage across Pakistan, including thousands of people being displaced, millions of homes being destroyed. So many people have lost their lives. We have the death toll standing at 1325, which includes a large number of children as well. And of course, there's a lot of damage to livestock and also 2 million acres of farmland, which then of course has the consequence of food security issues, which we are already dealing with. On top of that, of course, there are waterborne diseases and health issues that people are already facing. There are women needs and there are pregnancy issues that people are facing. There are homeless people, and they're so much in need of our help, and of course for people around the world to also come forward and help. There is a lot that is going on within the country as well, both at the political and economic front, but we must not forget that there is a large number and a large population of the country that is still affected by the floods, and we have the UN warning of more rain and the situation deteriorating in the coming month as well. So of course our response to these floods, our relief and rescue activities must double up. We need to be able to strengthen our capacities and our responses to these floods, and of course in line and in coordination with the relevant institutions and agencies within the country and also internationally. There have been a lot of international partners that have come forward, including the UN, with appeals, with aid, with technical support and humanitarian assistance as well. But of course, we need a lot more than that, and it seems that the consequences of these floods will be far-reaching, and we need to do some serious thinking about how to deal with such responses and such disasters and the potential effects of climate change that Pakistan has been facing for quite some time now. That is going to be our first segment of the show today. Our next segment is going to take a look at the political situation of the country in the aftermath of the controversial statements regarding the appointment of the future Chief of Army Staff by PTI leader Imran Khan at a recent rally in Faisalabad, which of course saw a lot of criticism and condemnation from the government, from the political parties, and also Pakistan Army and ISPR. We've also seen today in his message on Defence Day, the Prime Minister speaking about the fact that anyone who is going to be creating or hurting the bond between the armed forces and its people is not helping the country, is not in favor of the people and of Pakistan, and is not a friend of the country. This is Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's message on the Defence Day, which of course commemorates the sacrifices that our martyrs and Ghazis laid down 57 years ago. We've also seen a statement coming in from the ISPR earlier regarding these statements as well. And now, of course, the fact that when we talk about the kind of responses that are going on within these floods and the kind of terrorist threats that have been looming, the sacrifices that the armed forces have given in the past and continue to give are, of course, right there before us. And there is no need for the institution to prove to us that it is giving all of those sacrifices and that there is any question to their credibility or patriotism, which is, of course, unfortunate that that was questioned. However, we have seen that the PTI leadership have been giving their own explanations regarding the statement, claiming that it has been misunderstood, something that was echoed by the PTI leader himself in a rally today in Peshawar, where he defended his controversial remarks, saying that thieves, which he was referring to the political parties currently part of the government, should not be allowed to appoint the Chief of Army Staff, and this should be done on merit, and merit is the only way to decide this particular issue. So we're going to be taking a look at the responses that we've been receiving or hearing from the PTI side as well, and that the kind of impact that these remarks have and whether or not they can be claimed as being misunderstood. That is going to be our second segment of the show today. For all of this and more, we've been joined in the studios, as always, by senior analyst Farooq Patafi, and I've also been joined online for our first segment regarding flood relief situation and activities ongoing regarding rescue and relief by Mohammad Abdus Shakur, who's President Al Khidmat Foundation Pakistan, and Dr. Parvez Amir, climate change and water expert. Let me start with you, Mohammad Abdus Shakur. Of course, we've been hearing so many institutions, bodies, NGOs and foundations stepping up and providing support to the people. We have talked about in the past the kind of coordination or streamlining of these processes that is needed. Of course, there's a lot of help that's coming in from our international partners as well, but there is a lot that our people are also giving in. As part of the Al Khidmat Foundation, how do you see the process in terms of when we see such a disaster coming in or such a crisis within the country? What sort of efforts or planning or strategies are required in terms of understanding, analyzing the kinds of needs that exist, and then prioritizing the areas or people which need our help at the moment, and then of course providing people with access to these resources?
Sana, thank you so much. We are lucky today. We have a coordination committee of National Disaster Management, and we participated in that this morning. Although it was quite late, it should have come at least 3 to 4 weeks before, but thank God that has started. In fact, there are so many NGOs along with Al Khidmat Foundation Pakistan working in different segments. Some are working in health, some are providing food and others. And of course, Al Khidmat has an edge that we have a lot of volunteers throughout country, and we do have a trained team with us, medical team, doctors, as well as we have boats with us and other equipments to reach out in different parts of Sindh, which many areas still are not accessible, but we are trying our best to reach them there. But what is needed is a close coordination, and that close coordination can be provided only by PDMA and NDMA. And if this process starts, it is important they allow us to work in different areas and keep the communication open so that there is no duplication in this regard. So I do hope that better coordination will make things easy for the victims of flood.
Right. Shakoor Saab, let me first commend the services rendered by Al Khidmat Foundation. We are lucky to have so many charitable organizations which are doing a stellar job. But if I were to actually invert the question and ask you, what kind of support, in addition to what you have just pointed out, the coordination and permission to operate in various parts, what else do you need to serve people better?
See, first of all, I asked the NDMA managers today that in coming weeks, the rehabilitation part will start. Now, if they can help us and all other NGOs to locate the areas where these refugees should be settled. It should not be in those areas again, which are no-go area in a sense that water is always coming into those areas, and we have to be very careful to rebuild that these people are at a location which is safer. And this is only PDMA and NDMA can only provide these kind of facilities. Secondly, of course, which is very important, is the coordination part. I guess they have already started these things that whatever Al Khidmat is doing and whatever Akhuwat is doing and whatever some other organizations are doing, if there is a website where we can all put our information, so this will be a better coordinated effort in this regard.
That's a very good
Thirdly, which is important, is the area, especially the Sindh areas and some part of Balochistan. Balochistan is most neglected, and I can see many trucks coming in Punjab to Taunsa and DG Khan and so many other places. Taunsa is very dear to me. DG Khan is very important, but our people should think that Baloch need more help because media is not there. Their miseries are not counted. So we should reroute all this help, at least majority of that, into
Right, absolutely. Of course,
Balochistan.
people who are in most need of our help must get it, and of course, we need to prioritize that. Dr. Parvez, there is, of course, a lot of discussion in terms of the kind of planning that should have been done prior to these floods occurring. Of course, there were warnings at some level given by the Met Office as well, and there's an understanding, of course, of the climate change patterns and the way Pakistan has witnessed floods in the past as well. Is there any way you think that we could have been more prepared, or do you think in terms of when we talk about climate change issues, the kind of emphasis and importance that needs to be there? Of course, there is the global issue as well, but concerning just Pakistan at the moment, is it there in terms of the way that we are prioritizing it, in terms of the kind of issues that we are facing and the kind of responses that we need to be able to figure out and deliver?
I don't think so personally. I think there were some lessons which were taught to Pakistan in the 2010 floods. One lesson which we learned was early warning. I think we've taken heed to that, and Pakistan has done a reasonably good job in terms of our flood forecasting. Right? And that's one thing which we can, that's a positive aspect. What we have not taken heed on those lessons is to get people out of the harm's way. As my colleague from Al Khidmat is stating, if you already put population in harm's way, and they are basically settled in the riparian belts, regardless of what you do in terms of your flood management, whether you have dams, whatever you put up there, there's going to be some water which is going to come into these rivers, some is going to be planned, the other which is on the side from our transboundary waters which are coming into Ravi or into Satluj, those will be unplanned. Pakistan will never be able to make a very planned statement on that, that where water is going to come onto the Ravi or water is going to come onto the Satluj. So it's extremely important that we go back, we look at the lessons which were there for 2010, and then we rework ourselves from there. NDMA and these provincial development authorities, they are not a solution to this type of problem. These are good whenever you'll have a disaster, you have some, whether it's civil defense, whether it's the army, whether it's somebody will come up and they will bring the structure, especially those organizations which have infrastructure. They are the ones which have the helicopters, they are the ones which have the boats, they are the ones which have that. What you realistically need is you need a long-term strategy for adaptation. This type of flooding is going to occur on a very, very regular basis. Please mark these words. It's no longer that, this flood will come 50 years, or it will come twice after 100 years, or as we plan for dams, maybe once in 1,000 years. That's not the case. That's not what's going to happen. You're going to get these floods along with heat waves, along with droughts, along with glacier melt. The good thing about this particular flood is we have not had any problem created from glacier melt at the moment. Next time, in 2-3 years, what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot of these glaciers adding on to this flooding situation. We have not seen Kabul River come to total into an emergency situation. We basically got most of the flows which came in from the Swat River or some add-on from Indus River. When the floods really start coming in from Kabul, it's going to be overwhelming. Nushaira, we won't be able to save Nushaira like this, what we've been able to do. The lady over there, I was on the program with her, the Assistant Commissioner, did an excellent job. And there are many other examples coming out of Sindh and other places. So I think what you really need to do is to sit back. Pakistan has to have a long-term strategy. You cannot continue without putting a structure, whatever that structure is, whether it's a set of barrages, whether it's some diversion of your flood waters to the drier areas, to Thal, to Cholistan, to Tharparkar, wherever you want to divert, or it is storing that water underground. That's all. Nobody has mentioned that. That's another option. You always have this option to put the water into the ground. You simply don't have the resources to take that water out. I mean, we don't have the fuel, we don't have the energy resources to take it out. So the only solutions which are realistically left over are those which come up with infrastructure.
And Dr. Saab, I certainly find this idea fascinating, underwater, supply to other areas as well. But earlier you said that the first important thing is to get people out of the harm's way. And I understand that there has been a history of floods in this country, and there's historic, pathways through which these floods actually flow. But the problem is now there are cities in the way, and millions of people actually dwell there. What to do with that, sir? I understand that there is a concern about a drainage system in the south of the country which might be clogging all these regions. But what do you do with the people who have settled there and they have been living there for quite some time? How to convince them to uproot their lives and move elsewhere?
And Dr. Pervez, if you could also clarify a number of things. You mentioned the fact that the flood response, the early warning systems have improved, but we haven't really seen any action with that. So what good are the flood response or the early warning systems in terms of how our response hasn't changed? You also spoke about how the NDMA is not responsible and the kind of issues or planning that is required needs to be done by somebody else. Could you clarify who exactly were you referring to? And also regarding glacier melt, has it not caused problems up in the north?
Let me start from, go from your last question and move backwards. No, I don't think that glacier melt has contributed that much to this particular. It's basically rainfall. It's rainfall, okay. And then there is flooding which came from the other two rivers, from Swat River and from Kabul River to some extent. No, these glaciers will start tumbling down. The 30 or 40 lakes you have, the GLOFs, the glacier lake outfalls, those 30, 40, along with, as the temperature moves up to 5 to 6 degrees on your Hindu Kush, on Karakoram, and all the three ranges which we have, the hell will break loose. And this is not in the foreseeable future. It is right now. Climate change is not going to happen. It is happening. So those who had this feeling that, oh, it's a once in a while, it's a blooming thing, that's not the case. Pakistan is just one case. The world, those who are silent watchers, onlookers, they should be reminded this. It is not only Pakistan. We are a multiple threat system. We'll face 4 or 5 types of music, as I said. Heat waves you'll face, droughts you'll face glacier melt. All right, we have a little bit more on our plate, but the whole world is in it. So anybody who thinks complacent, sitting somewhere in Europe or something, that, oh, well, it's not us, it's only Pakistan. That's not the case. This particular flood, as you said, is overwhelming. It's overwhelming in the sense that 1/3 of your population, even no matter you are 20 al-Khidmats, I wish we could bring Idi out of the grave today. We need people like that to provide that leadership. But it's still overwhelming. Our volunteers can come, they can do that. All countries which have single river systems, Pakistan is basically a single river system. You have 5 rivers, but if you draw a line, it's basically the Indus. Populations reside close to rivers. If you look at Tigris, you go back to Mesopotamia, you go to any civilization in the world, you go to the Colorado, you go to the Murray Dawson in Australia, populations do reside on the embankments on the side. In our particular case, populations are not residing on embankments. Our populations are actually in the riverine belt. The reason is it is free land. It is free land. People, normally they have 2 abodes. One they keep in these riverian belts, the other they keep somewhere else. In this particular case, we are again going to be flush. You can try what you want. You may try your best. This is for Al-Khidmat. People want to go back to where their graves are. We've seen that in Tarbela, we've seen it in Mangla, we've seen it in places. That attachment, nobody wants to leave, regardless of how much government push you try to make that, oh, you will not go back, we will not settle you over there. We need to do a comprehensive plan for that. Other countries have done it. First of all, I see no reason for floods to take such a heavy toll on a country like Pakistan. You look at the dam situation, if I had 4 dams which we proposed in 1960, Harvard University proposed very clearly that you do this 10, 12 dams, you run out, this problem is finished for Pakistan. There is no big science. You don't need PhDs to come and tell you that. In 2005, we made that statement again. Categorically, the world accepted it. At that time, I think there was one, General Musharraf. He said, this is the Bible which you people are talking about is the Bible. The science is known. We don't need new science for that. We know what needs to be done. We know our expertise is there. Our problem is inability to act and manage water. A blessing turns into a total catastrophe for us. We don't need this. We need to move fast. These next 5 years are most critical for Pakistan. These Bashas, some of these other dams, structures which we have, they are going to take 18 to 20 years. Some of them are already damaged. If you see the Bamand Dam, then the Munda Dam, which we call, they are damaged. We need to come up with some structures. We need to come up with a diversion plan that we are simply not going to let this water flow into these rivers and kill our people. We're going to divert that.
And Dr. Saab, that is a concern that I have. Every time we talk about any kind of situation, we end up talking about what needs to be done. Sadly, it seems that for quite some time we haven't done much at all. But with your permission, let me go back to Shakur Saab. Sana, if you allow me.
Sure.
Sir, at this moment, Dadu
Yes.
seems to be sinking. Khairpur, a child actually died in Khairpur because of hunger, especially she was in a relief camp, and even there she died. In Shaddad Court, we see this waterborne disease, skin disease, which is spreading. At this moment, do you think that we have the kind of medical provisions and facilities to cure people who might be suffering in these camps?
I just have a message tonight from Jacobabad that a person had suicide because of the hunger. So sad scenes. Of course, we do not have enough support system with us. We are trying to get volunteers from medical colleges, final year students. We have FEMA doctors and others. But people do want to volunteer, but they fear because of the water situation, ladies especially, and ladies are most vulnerable in those areas. Pregnant ladies, ladies with small babies, they are the most vulnerable. And of course, the situation in which they live, they normally do not like to expose themselves to male doctors. So we need a lot of female volunteers, paramedics, and we do have our ambulances and others, and I would like to, with your facilities, ask medical community, especially the female medical support, so that they can come up
right,
and be part of our volunteerism in
and
Sindh
because
areas.
Shakur Sahab, because this is an international channel, an English channel, perhaps you can appeal to the world as well, because we remember in 2005, medical teams were sent from all over the world to help the earthquake victims. So this time
But let
also
me tell you, that was a different situation. We need a lot of surgery and specialized things. Right now, these diseases are mostly waterborne, skin diseases, diarrhea, and others. And Pakistan is rich in, medical resources. I guess it's only we have to motivate them and give them the proper facilities. They must know that when they are going out, they are protected, and they can work in an environment which is conducive
Right, and Mr.
to their
Shakur, something
situation.
that earlier Dr. Pervez also mentioned, of course, was the fact that there is a concern of the people and how they view things as well, because they want to return to their homeland and they have certain attachments which need to be taken into account when we talk about planning and strategies. Also, similarly, when you spoke about women needs and the fact that females are not comfortable going to male doctors, that's an actual problem that we are facing. And of course, when we talk in terms of responses or strategies that are urgently required in a disaster, perhaps the most immediate ones come to the forefront, and issues and nuances like these seem to be take a background, but they have a major impact on the way or the success of the response that we are planning. Is that taken into account in terms of the national response that you're seeing currently? Of course, you're somebody who's pointing it out, but did you see that in our other responses in the way rescue efforts are taking place?
Request the on a very small scale. Thing is that the coordination is missing. We don't have coordination with deputy commissioners, which are the responsible people of PDMA. They are busy in their own so many other activities. The thing is that if there is proper facility, they announce that, look, you go to Jacobabad, these 5 places are available with us, stay there and start treating them. Now we have to locate the places, and then we have to take the medical equipment and the resources, and this takes a longer time. If the government is there, at least to facilitate many things, we can improve the services a lot. And I do hope that in coming days they will be providing such kind of services to us, to all other NGOs.
Right, absolutely. Farooq, of course, in the aftermath of these floods, we of course saw a lot of individuals and organizations within Pakistan coming forward and trying to help, and everybody was making an effort on their own. But the kind of issues that have been pointed out by Mr. Shakur as well, of course, point to the fact that perhaps there needs to be a larger coordinated response in terms of how we're looking at things, because even now it seems that the priority needs at the moment are not clear, or what resources to allocate in which area seem to not really be happening in the way that they should. When we talk about the NDMA and PDMA and other organizations getting together, is that something that can actually happen in the way that things are developing? Of course, the response is happening right now, and how the situation is evolving. While this is happening, can we actually increase our coordination efforts?
Right, Sana, and that is a very important question, because I remember in 2010, I traveled extensively covering all the areas, flood affected areas, and one thing that struck me was the scale of rural poverty. We were not exposed to that. This time, because the impact and the spread is bigger, more, you are going to see far more, you'll get more exposure to all that kind of poverty. And in that situation, our media that usually is really, obsessed with covering a spectacle, one would have thought that this time they are going to actually go ahead and start covering. But Shakur Saab just pointed out early in the program what exactly is going on. Nobody is covering Balochistan. And then in rural Sindh and southern Punjab, have you seen today's television? Most of the programs were covering Imran Khan, were about Imran Khan or some other political issue. It wasn't even about these issues, right? Of course, when you talk about these institutions, these departments, it is their responsibility to coordinate. But how do people actually hold them accountable? Through two means. One, through democratic means. Secondly, through awareness because of media. And at this moment, media is not doing its job at all. When you are obsessed with so many other things, nobody seems to care that 1/3 of the country is underwater. At that situation, such a humongous part of the country, their population is literally suffering. But what we get is coming through from the social media, not national media, and that is a sad situation.
It is.
If you
That's
to very quickly answer your early question, I think that there isn't going to be that kind of coordination, because nobody is awake at this moment. Media is not doing its job at all.
Right. Mr. Shakur, you wanted to add something?
Well, very true. Always, as always, the social media has taken over, and whatever is coming into our national media and electronic media, they are just following what social media had created the hype. It is unfortunate. I guess electronic media should go deeper into Sindh, deeper into Balochistan, deeper into the areas which are badly help needed. I guess this way at least we can, yeah.
Right. Dr. Parvez, there's of course the issue of climate change that you earlier mentioned, and you talked about how this is an ongoing process and it's not something that will happen, it's continuing to happen even if there is no flood. And we of course know that there are international activists as well, such as Greta Thunberg, who have been pointing out this issue. She's also mentioned Pakistan as an example, criticizing Sweden with regards to their emphasis on elections and not talking about climate change as a major issue. And she also says that this is something that people look at something to deal with when they have time to spare, when actually it is impacting almost all of the issues and problems that people are facing today. When we have such a situation on a global front as well, where there are major contributors to climate change, and the conversation around climate change is still so convoluted and complicated, and nobody seems to be able to deal with it as an urgent threat, what sort of opportunities or possibilities exist for countries like Pakistan and the way that they can respond to the climate change issues and its impact at home?
And Dr. Saab, the West might have the luxury of saying that it is not our problem, but a country which is sunk, one-third is sunk. What are we Pakistanis waiting for? You keep on saying that we need to do this or that. Why is it that we haven't done all these things already?
I think the forewarning was already given. We've been talking about this for 20 years. I have been on most of these, what we call COP, Conference of Parties with the United Nations, and really pushing this agenda that Pakistan is the country which is going to be most vulnerable. That part they accept. If you think that somebody is going to come out and finance it, that part is not there. We were getting some news even in the newspaper by one of our senators that he's going to go and he's going to scream and he's going to ask these countries to bear the cost of what they have created, the mess they have created. Pakistan is 135th in terms of emissions. We are nobody, it's less than even 0.5%. That's not going to happen. That's not the way the world works. I mean, if you look at Mr. Trump, he just came in and he just got America out of the whole scenario of climate change. It's only with the new government, that it's coming back. I mean, they're coming back to realize this.
Right, absolutely. I'm sorry to interrupt, Dr. Pervez, but we just have to go to on a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the debate. We are in conversation with Mohammad Abdul Shakur, President, Al Khidmat Foundation, Pakistan, and Dr. Pervez Ahmed, climate change and water expert. Dr. Pervez, before the break, we were talking about the global response to climate change, and we were talking about how we cannot expect financing and any help in that term with regards to climate change efforts within Pakistan. But can there be efforts towards contribution to climate change or having a serious conversation around this issue? Dr. Pervez, are you with us? Yes.
Yeah.
Carry on, please.
Can you hear me now? Yeah?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I think Pakistan is at the forefront. If you look at BBC today, you look at CNN, Pakistan is sort of a major sort of player in the coverage which we are getting. We need to synthesize very clearly three things. First of all, we need to be able to capitalize on the $200 billion Green Adaptation Fund. Disaster management, disaster NDMAs, PDMAs, that's not where the money comes in. That is only, it's only a trickle drop, which comes as a small amount of the aid. The big money which Bangladesh is assessing, some of the other countries are assessing, is in that adaptation fund. That requires an intellectual input. Pakistan needs to get its act together and start looking at that. That's number one. Number two, my feeling is that Pakistan needs to come up and be specific. You're doing three things wrong. First of all, we're making statements every day. Our loss is 8.5 billion. Sometimes Mr. Hassan Iqbal starts saying, oh, it's 12.5 billion US dollars. We make these very, very ambiguous statements, which are very confusing to the world. They keep on. You have to be very cogent. It is science-based. I mean, you cannot make an international statement unless you really have followed a methodology, whether it's the World Bank methodology or the Sendai methodology, whichever one you want to follow, it has to be science-based. So I think it's important to synthesize what you need. Still, we are not going to have, just as Shakur Saab is doing, and there are others, it is not for the NGOs only to provide that response. Who will be held responsible? Will we tomorrow hold responsible if 50,000 people start dying, which is very likely with a scenario like this? Do we start putting the blame on the NGOs? That these 4 NGOs, they were taking their cooked eggs and stuff like that. Who is responsible here? Are people only taking up on a chopper and just for the photo sessions? I think that point is very well
absolutely,
made.
Absolutely, Dr. Pervez, and that's a valid point. And let me just quickly go to Mr. Shakur as well. Mr. Shakur, you started off the conversation saying that there needs to be better coordination between the NDMA, PDMA, and all the different organizations who are working in these relief efforts. But irrespective of these floods or any disaster, do you think there is any possibility of foundations such as yours to actually mobilize different government institutions, a response unit such as the NDMA or PDMA, to have a coordinated strategic planning in place, to have an input in terms of policy, in terms of what sort of efforts need to exist in prevention as well?
Well, I guess we should try that. I don't think there could be a big success in that, but I have another idea in mind to share with you all.
Okay.
We are talking of climate change. Let's talk of mind change. If government announces that there is an election after 2 months, say this is mid of September, say in November there is an election, there are at least 5,000 people in Pakistan ready to invest, say, $500 million to $1 billion rupees in their elections. A huge amount will go into that. Can these people realize that these Pakistanis suffering are our own people, and instead of waiting to spend that money into election and buying the vote, right now is the chance to win their hearts instead of buying the vote.
Right,
Come out.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, that's all
people.
we have time for, but thank you so much, Mohammad Abdul Shakur and Dr. Parvez Saab, for joining us and being a part of the debate. Yes, Farooq, you wanted to add something?
I mean, that is a great argument, but who thinks that way in Pakistan
Right.
or anywhere in the world? Right?
And mind change obviously is a very difficult and long-term process anyway. Our second segment, and we have very short time on that, but we'll quickly take a look at the political situation of the country, especially in the aftermath of the controversial remarks that the PTI leader made regarding the appointment of the future Chief of Army Staff, and of course also defended his remarks earlier in a rally in Peshawar today, saying that what he meant to say was that the political legitimacy of the current government does not exist in terms of their ability to nominate a patriotic Chief of Army Staff. This, of course, Farooq, has been something that the PTI leaders in the past were also talking about before the PTI chairman spoke about it today. They have said that these statements have been misunderstood, and it's not the first statement that they're claiming is misunderstood. Many statements coming out from the PTI chairman seem to be misunderstood. What really is the problem here? Are we not understanding the kind of remarks they're making or the kind of stance they have with the relevant institutions within Pakistan, or are the statements themselves really are clear?
No, you're right. I think that these statements and these sights and sounds need some special kind of filters. Perhaps we should have special contact lens, and we should be wearing some kind of headphones, right, to understand what exactly is being said. I'm sorry, when you talk about any obscure artist, the first attempt is that they keep on insisting that they are right. Then when the pressure increases, it becomes whataboutery. Okay, we did this, but how about that person? How about that person? How about you, when you were saying similar kind of things? When the second thing also fails and pressure still mounts, the third attempt is to start changing the context. You keep on saying that, okay, you didn't understand, we were just being constructive, or we were adding to certain aspects. Remember, today is Defense Day of Pakistan, and at this moment, the Pakistan Army, our armed forces have cancelled their event, which was to commemorate the event, the day, and also celebrate the sacrifices of the martyrs of this country. And Army Chief himself actually spent entire day visiting various flood-affected areas. In that day, Imran Khan Sahab still is trying to put another spin on this. Unfortunately, his own party will not actually accept it. I don't know what his followers are going to do, but I've been listening to leaders of the party. They had a hard time selling this idea. I'll tell you something, and I hope that Imran Khan Sahab also gets this message. Today is not only Defense Day, it is a personal moment for me as well. It is an anniversary, work anniversary for me. It has been almost a decade since I got associated with PTV. And since then, many governments have changed. And repeatedly, we have been asked at times to actually add to some kind of creative angle to our coverage or assessment. But one thing that I ensured that I will never partake, and that is criticism of army or armored forces. Why? Because as I was joining here, we were still fighting the war on terror. We still are, and yesterday in North Waziristan, 5 soldiers sacrificed their lives. It is going on. At that time, why should we try to politicize any institution? I understand that PTI has, brass thinks that they can get away with many things. They are on social media, elsewhere, WhatsApp. There is this whisper campaign, but unfortunately, they don't realize that it is going to hurt them when they will need every kind of support from elsewhere.
Right, absolutely. And of course, there's a lot more to talk about this issue as well, but perhaps that amount of time that we have spent talking about this can serve as a lesson for other media outlets also to realize that the important issue right now that the country is facing is, of course, floods, and how a large number of our population is still suffering and needs our help. That's all that we have from the debate.